When you're thinking about the types of sources you want to use for your project, two types to consider are scholarly versus popular sources. They both have their pros and cons, so let's talk about what each is. A scholarly source is a source that has been written by an expert in the field, typically a professor or a researcher. It's written for other scholars, other people who are doing research in that field or studying within it. Because it is by and for an expert, the paper itself is typically highly specialized. It has very specific types of language for the field of study that it's in, and it's usually really dense and quite long. So the benefits to a scholarly source is that you can typically trust that the source is reliable. Most scholarly sources that you'll find in your library database are peer-reviewed, which means that other experts have had a look at it and approved of the findings. But the downside to a scholarly source is it can be very difficult to read, especially for those of us who may not actually be experts in that field of study. Now, popular sources are sources that we're more familiar with. They are the kind of news articles that you would find on New York Times or Washington Post. The writers are typically journalists who might do a deep dive into the subject or report on what's happening, but they are not necessarily experts. Their audience is the general public or just people who are interested in that topic. The nice thing about popular sources is that they're typically easier to understand. They're written in everyday language, and they're much shorter than scholarly sources. Where scholarly sources are usually over 5 pages long, popular sources are typically less than 5 pages. So let's take a look at kind of the difference between the two. If we go into our Nevada State College Library website, let's say that my topic has to do with the environment. So my search is drought in Las Vegas. When I do a search here, the first things that come up, you'll see are articles, but we can't tell necessarily are they scholarly or are they popular. So here are a couple things to look for. When you see peer-reviewed, that is a really good indicator that it is a scholarly source. You can also filter over by peer-reviewed journals as well, and they'll only give you your scholarly sources. Likewise, you can search by newspaper articles, which would then be filtering by popular sources. If you click on one of the scholarly sources, there are also some things that you can see when it comes up that give you a clue that it's scholarly. First of all, it has a volume and an issue number. Typically, popular sources don't have that. It also has a DOI link, which our popular sources would have kind of more of a typical URL. When you're thinking about using a popular or scholarly source, you might just consider who your audience is. If you are wanting to reach out to an audience who is going to be a little bit more casual, then maybe popular sources are fine. If you're going to be trying to reach to an audience who are going to want to make sure that you have kind of crossed your T's and dotted your I's, making sure that you've really looked into what is correct or incorrect in your sources, then you would probably want to use scholarly. So these are some things to look for.